Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Budget Builds monthly series, and welcome to the month of May. Let's check out what kind of system we're building out in this month's episode. So before we get too far into the video, just want to outline what Budget Builds Monthly is. In case you've seen this before or you're new to the channel, welcome. Let's check out what Budget Builds Monthly is all about. Posting the first Monday of every month, I review your budget request submitted via the Google form down in the description below. Using this information and PCPartPicker, I try to build the best bang for the buck PC within your budget, considering any constraints or platform preferences you may have. We usually make 4 builds, 2 AMD and 2 Intel, using either DDR4 or DDR5. We also check for deals on Microcenter and Newegg to see if we can modify the build to create a better PC within your budget. If possible, we also take a look at the used marketplace too. Next, we compare each build using online benchmarks and list out the pros and cons of the top options. This helps us figure out which build is best for you. And don't forget, we can't do any of this without your input. Speaking of the input, let's see how we fill out the Budget Builds request form. Now, a quick disclaimer to go with this. Budget builds will be as close or slightly over the budget due to parts and availability, as well as sales going on at the recorded time. In case you forgot or you're new to the channel, this is how we fill out the Budget Builds request form. For your privacy, we do not collect your Google information. Just don't worry about that. You actually don't have to sign in. Budget builds do not include taxes, fees, or Windows keys unless specifically asked otherwise. Budgets will be in USD. Now, form factor preference, this will determine case size, as in this is the motherboard size we're going to pick. If you want a mini ITX motherboard, we will go with a mini ITX case, unless you want us to get a micro ATX motherboard and then a specific case size, just put here in other. For CPU and GPU preferences, if you want us to build an Intel only system or an AMD only system, and same thing for their graphics cards. If you have any other preferences or requests when it comes to CPU or GPU, like an Intel GPU, just put it here in the other category. Areas of focus just covers the hierarchical standpoint of how we're going to build out the system and spread that budget. If you want us to focus first on your CPU, then your motherboard, maybe your graphics card, we're just going to put the budget more focused towards those. Focus first, and then focus last. We'll just grab some generic and placeholder items for you, the user, to actually pick out later on. For already purchased our own system components, if you already have a power supply or a case or anything like storage, just put it here. Just specify specifically what you have, just so we can work that into the build and we don't have to worry about putting money towards something in that budget that you already have. No sense in buying 2 PC cases if you can just use the one you already have. For peripherals, if you are requesting any, like a mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, a headset, just press on the peripheral, and then the other just request what kind. For example, if you want a 1440p monitor, just hit monitor and then press 1440p in here. And then other request, no RGB or anything else you want us to know, just press in the other and then hit submit. And that pretty much concludes filling out the Google form. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comment section below. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's check out what kind of system we're building out in this month's episode. Alright, for the month of May, let's see what kind of response we got. This user has a budget of 1,100 USD, wants a gaming type of system, no form factor preference, no CPU or GPU preferences, wants us to focus first on their graphics card, then their CPU, then their memory. Currently has no purchased or owned system components, wants us to find a monitor with no specifications, and has no preference for RGB or not. Alright, so we got a decent sized budget to work with. There are no preferences on anything, so we can probably build a couple systems out, take a look at some bundle deals. The only difficult thing is going to be finding a decent graphics card, especially with today's pricing, and monitor. Now, monitors are easy to source. So why don't we check out the first system we can build and go from there. Starting out with our template build with the Cooler Master Hyper 212. Just an all-around cooler that we just put on every single build, regardless if it came with a stock cooler or not. User, it's up to you if you want to just save the 30 bucks. If the CPU comes with a stock cooler, you don't actually have to get this one. For storage, we have the Crucial P3 Plus 500GB M.2 SSD. This is a PCIe 4.0x4 SSD. Just a basic start, good for some games and your OS. You can always just add more storage later on. For a graphics card, we have the MSI RTX 3060. This is the 12GB version of the card. You can always get this card for less on the used market. We may or may not take a look at that later on. But a good 1080p card, even in today's market. For our case, we picked some placeholder DIY PC mid-tower case. And then for our power supply, we went the EVGA 750W 80 Plus Gold. And then the user specified they wanted a monitor, so we just picked this one from MSI. It's a 1080p 180Hz monitor. For 1100 bucks, you're not really going to be doing a lot of 1440p gaming. So even just a basic 1080p, you can always swap out later on. Alright, let's start with our first build, AM4. For CPU, we went with the Ryzen 9 5950X. It's a 12 core, 24 thread, 3.7 GHz boosted to 4.8. We have that same Cooler Master Hyper 212. For motherboard, we went with the Asus TUF Gaming. It's an A520M plus micro ATX motherboard. Does have Wi-Fi. For memory, we went with the 16GB kit of DDR4 3200 CL16 from Corsair. And then our storage, video card, case, power supply, and monitor all stay the same for around $20 under our budget. Now, if we upgrade this to an AM5 build, we have the Ryzen 5 9600X. It's a 6 core, 12 thread, 3.9 GHz boosting to 5.4. Same CPU cooler. For motherboard, this time we went the ASRock B650M, another micro ATX AM5 motherboard. Again, has some Wi-Fi. This time for memory, we went the G-Skill Flare X5, 32GB kit of DDR5 6000 CL30, and then everything else pretty much stays the same. This time we are around $10 over that budget, but just a reminder, this is AM5. So pricing is going to be a little here and there depending on which parts you get. Moving on to Intel DDR4. And with the i5 14600KF, it's a 14 core, 20 thread, 3.5 GHz boosting to 5.3. Same Cooler Master Hyper 212, the Gigabyte Z790S Wi-Fi LGA 1700 ATX motherboard, a standard 16GB kit of DDR4 3200 CL16 from Corsair, and then everything from storage, video card, case, power supply, and monitor all stay the same for around 50 bucks under our budget. Now we could add some more storage if we wanted to, we could add more RAM, choice is up to the user. And then finally for Intel DDR5, we have that same i5 14600KF. We could have gone for the 14600K. The only real difference is the dedicated Intel UHD graphics that are in these 14600K versus the KF. But the KF is perfectly fine. The only real difference is $10. So we're just going to keep this as is. For motherboard, we went with the NZXT N7 Z790 ATX LG 1700 motherboard. And then we have that G-Skill Flare X5 32GB kit of DDR5 6000 CL36. Now the difference between this and the AM5 build is that G-Skill Flare X5 kit is for AMD. This one is just versatile. And then storage, video card, case, power supply, and monitor all stay the same for $5 under our budget. Now, the next thing we're going to do before we check out some bundle deals is do a nice small CPU comparison. Then we can move on to a gaming comparison. finalize our builds out with a bundle deal. Maybe do one more CPU comparison after that if need be. Maybe check out a used market, and that's pretty much it. So starting out with our CPU comparison. Here we have the Ryzen 9 5900X, our 9600X, 14600K that we talked about earlier but didn't actually use for builds, and our 14600KF. Now CPU scores alone, this DDR5 14600KF build is a lot better than our DDR5 AMD build. But if you wanted to back down to AM4 and DDR4, our Ryzen 9 5900X build is the one you want to do. But we're talking about gaming here, so let's compare our Ryzen 9 5900X with our 14600K or KF. They're pretty much the same thing, just the one has integrated graphics, the other one doesn't. Alright, here on the YouTube channel Mark PC, we are comparing the two CPUs. The only difference is this user is going to be doing 2K Ultra benchmarks rather than standard 1080p, but it's pretty much going to show the overall comparison between the two. So even if the numbers seem like they're that much different, even at 1080p gaming, it's perfectly fine. Alright, so it overall seems that our Ryzen 9 5900X is actually worse off than our i5 14600K or KF. So we're going to see if we can build a better AM5 system, since these two are pretty much ones you don't want to do. And we're going to keep our i5 14600KF. But before we do all that, we should probably take a look at some bundle deals and finalize this comparison out. So let's remove our 14600K and let's get over to Microcenter and see what we can get. Alright, so for AM4 we have $374.97. For AM5 we have $404.88. For DDR4 Intel we have $354.97. And Intel DDR5, we have $388.98. Alright, we're going to start out with our AMD bundles, and then we'll move on to Intel. Alright, so it seems like Microcenter only has AM5 bundle deals. So with that $404.88, we can go for this, the Ryzen 7 9700X, B650, and the 32 gig kit of G-Skill Flare X5 RAM. So we're just going to hang on to this build, and we'll compare it later on. We're going to hop over to Intel and see what we can get with that. So just like our AMD builds, it doesn't seem like we can get a DDR4 build unless we went with this i7 12700K and crucial DDR4 RAM, and our i7 14600K is actually better than this i7 12700K, so we're not even going to worry about that. So yeah, it seems like that's all we can do for that. Let's compare our new AM5 build with our other builds and finalize this sheet out. Alright, so here we have all of our systems. And it seems like the Ryzen 7 9700X is lacking a little bit in comparison to the 14600KF. But it's not that big of a difference, especially since it has a little bit over half the cores as the 14600K. Which leaves us with this. For AM5, we have our Microcenter Ryzen 7 9700X bundled deal. And for brand new, you can buy, you don't have to go to Microcenter. Intel DDR5, we have our i5 14600KF build, which you can actually mostly buy from Amazon. And that brings us to the end. Thank you everyone for watching. User, I hope we actually built out some systems within your scope. Everyone else, consider subscribing, fill out that Google form. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike it, and I'll see you all in the next video.